The Harvest Creek Festival has always been a traditional event filled with lights, laughter, and joy. But this year, something was wrong. Something lurked in the darkness. Something watched from the crowd. And when Ethan Grayson tried to uncover the truth, he realized that some legends should never be investigated. Get ready, because this story will haunt you long after it ends. Before we start, comment below where you're watching from. And of course, subscribe to the channel and hit the like button, because that helps me a lot to keep bringing you scary stories like this. The town of Harvest Creek, nestled in the heart of Idaho, lived for its annual harvest festival. In early October, the cornfields became lantern-lit mazes. Food stalls lined the central square, and a Ferris wheel lazily spun under the autumn sky. For the residents, it was the most anticipated time of the year, but that year, something seemed different. The wind blowing between the houses carried an unusual chill, a shiver that was more than just autumnal. There was a whispered rumor among the elders, a contained fear in the eyes of those who had seen too much. Children spoke in hushed tones about strange shadows in the corn maze. Ethan Grayson, a freelance journalist, was passing through Harvest Creek when he first heard the story. Sitting at the counter of a local bar, he listened to the residents talking about an old legend of the festival. "It's just a silly story," said the bar owner while wiping a glass. But his voice had a slight tremor, and his eyes avoided the darker corners of the establishment. The legend spoke of a clown, a being that appeared only during the festival. At first he made the children laugh. Then the laughter turned into screams. People disappeared, never to be seen again. Ethan wrote it all down. It was exactly the kind of urban legend perfect for a viral article. The next night, he walked to the festival. The golden lights flickered, the scent of caramel apples and sweet popcorn floated through the air. Families laughed, couples embraced under the autumn breeze, but Ethan felt like a stranger in this world of normalcy. He knew that beneath the surface of the celebration, something lurked. Passing by the corn maze, something caught his attention. An aged poster nailed to a wooden post. The festival clown, he laughs. He dances, he takes. The letters were stained, as if they had been scratched by trembling hands. Before he could look closer, a sharp laugh cut through the air. Ethan turned quickly, his heart jumping in his chest. But it was just a little girl, running with a cotton candy in her hands. He laughed at himself and kept walking. That's when he noticed something strange. Despite the crowd around, there was an empty space subtly opening around a specific figure. A man in a worn suit, pale skin, exaggerated smile, and eyes that seemed like black orbs. The clown. He wasn't doing tricks. He wasn't handing out balloons. He just stood there, watching, always watching. Intrigued, Ethan took out his phone to take a picture, but as soon as he framed the shot, the clown was no longer there, just the emptiness where he had been moments before. And then something glinted on the ground, reflecting the light of the Ferris wheel. A coin. Ethan bent down and picked it up. It was cold, heavy, older than any he had ever seen. On it, engraved in small, crooked letters, it read, "You're next." And then he felt it, a presence behind him. Ethan turned around so quickly that he almost lost his balance. The festival continued to buzz around him, but for a moment, everything seemed more distant, muffled, as if he were underwater. He scanned the crowd, looking for anything out of place. Nothing. Just people laughing, children running, couples kissing under the colored lights. His heart pounded in his chest as he examined the coin in his hand. The metal was rough, irregular, as if it had been hand-minted centuries ago. But what disturbed him most was the engraving. "You're next." A distant laugh made his blood run cold. He looked up and among the moving bodies saw the figure again. The clown, standing at the entrance of the corn maze, still as a statue. His head was slightly tilted to the side, as if curious. The smile was too wide. The teeth looked like something sharp in the dark. Ethan blinked, and in an instant, the clown was gone, but something remained. The sound, not of laughter, but of something scratching, like nails scraping against wood. He spun on his heels, but all he saw was an old carousel slowly turning. The children's music echoed through the festival, but now it seemed slower, more distorted. He needed to get out of there. He walked quickly to the festival exit, ignoring the noise around him. But as he moved forward, he had the unsettling feeling that something was following him. With each step, he felt a growing weight. His shoulders stiffened. He knew that if he looked back, he would see something he didn't want to see. He clutched the coin in his hand, kept moving forward, focusing on the only logical thing, reaching the hotel. But when he finally reached the town's main street, something made him stop. The poster, the same one he had seen earlier in the corn maze, now affixed to the wall of a building in front of him. But something had changed. The words were not the same. Now, in distorted and more aggressive letters, it read, "He's behind you." The air grew heavy. The smell of rust and something rotten filled his nostrils. He felt the presence again. His muscles tensed. If he ran, he knew it would be useless. If he stayed still, maybe it would be worse. Slowly, he turned around. Nothing, or almost. The street was deserted, except for an elongated shadow cast by the yellow light of a lamppost. But it wasn't his shadow. It was another. And then the laughter came again. Low, like a whisper. Ethan ran. His feet pounded the wet asphalt of Harvest Creek's main street, the cold air cutting into his skin as he tried to ignore the feeling that something was getting closer and closer. The laughter persisted, now more subtle, infiltrating his mind like a nightmare that refuses to end. He reached the hotel, almost tripping over the entrance steps. The door creaked open, and the smell of aged wood and dust enveloped him. The lobby was empty. The old receptionist, who'd been dozing behind the counter when he arrived earlier, was no longer there. Ethan tried to catch his breath as he looked out through the glass door. The street seemed normal. No sign of the clown, no threatening shadow. But he knew. He climbed the stairs 2 steps at a time, entered his room, and locked the door. His hands were shaking. He grabbed his phone and opened the gallery. The photo he had tried to take earlier was still there, but now something was different. The space where the clown should have been was not empty. A blurry, distorted shadow hovered there, like a smear bleeding into the image. His stomach churned. He dropped the phone and went to the bathroom, splashing water on his face. He needed to think clearly. He needed logic. All of this was a trick, right? A street performer trying to scare him. Maybe even a festival stunt to feed the legend. But then he remembered the coin. He pulled it out of his pocket and looked at it again. The metal was warm now, almost burning his skin. The inscription had changed. The words, "You're next," were still there. But below them, something new. Look through the mirror. His blood ran cold. The feeling of being watched returned in full force. He turned slowly to the bathroom mirror. His own image stared back at him, eyes wide and breath ragged. But then, something changed. In the reflection, the door behind him was open, but he knew he had locked it. His heart stopped for a second. He turned quickly. The room door was still closed. However, when he looked back at the mirror, a figure was there, short, thin, dressed in a worn and stained suit, head tilted to the side. The eyes, black as bottomless pits. Ethan backed away, but his reflection remained still. The clown smiled, wide, unnatural, revealing sharp, grey teeth. His chest rose and fell, as if laughing silently. The image in the mirror distorted. The glass trembled, as if something was trying to come out. Ethan stumbled backward, hitting the wall. When he looked again, the clown was gone, but something in the room had changed. The doorknob began to turn slowly. Ethan held his breath as he watched the doorknob turn. The metallic sound filled the room. Each click echoed like a nail being hammered into his skull. His entire body was tense, waiting for the inevitable. But then, silence. The doorknob stopped. He stood there frozen, his eyes fixed on the door. Time seemed to stretch, turning each second into a suffocating eternity. Then, slowly, he took a step forward. His heart pounded against his ribs as he reached out and touched the cold surface of the door. Locked. On the other side, nothing moved. No breathing, no sound. But Ethan knew he was still there. Backing away, he grabbed his phone. He needed to get out of there. He needed proof. Something to explain all of this. His hands trembled as he tried to dial a number, but the device froze. The screen flickered with static before turning off completely. Shit! He tried to turn it on again with no success. A faint laugh echoed through the room. Ethan felt a chill run up his spine, but it wasn't coming from the door. It wasn't coming from the hallway. It was coming from under the bed. Every muscle in his body tensed. The room seemed to shrink around him. The shadows on the walls lengthened, swallowing the corners of the room. The sound continued, low, dragged out, as if something was laughing with him or at him. His body acted before his mind could rationalize. He ran to the door, unlocking it in one swift motion, and rushed into the hallway. The lights flickered. The old carpets muffled his steps. The hotel seemed empty, much emptier than it should have been. He hurried down the stairs, but something was wrong. The lobby wasn't the same as before. The receptionist was gone. The walls looked peeled, covered in dark stains, as if they were rotting. The clock above the counter spun its hands at absurd speeds, marking non-existent hours. And then he saw it. In the center of the lobby, where a coffee table used to be, there was an antique mirror, tall, with a golden cracked frame, reflecting the room in a strange way, distorted. Ethan knew he shouldn't approach it, but something pulled him. He took a step, then another, until he was in front of the dusty glass. His reflection was there, pale and breathless. But he wasn't alone. Behind him, inside the mirror, the silhouette of the clown emerged from the shadows. His empty eyes stared at him, the smile now even wider, tearing the skin of his face. The laughter started again, first low, then growing until the glass cracked. Small fissures appeared on the surface, spreading like spider webs. And then the clown's hand came out of the mirror. The long, bony fingers extended, reaching for Ethan. He tried to step back, but his feet were stuck to the floor. The glass began to shatter, pieces falling around him. The laughter now filled everything, vibrating in his bones. And then the world tore itself apart. The glass exploded, shards flew everywhere, cutting Ethan's skin as he fell backward, gasping. But the true horror wasn't the shattering mirror. It was what lay beyond it. The reflection had vanished, and in its place was something impossible, a space that shouldn't exist. Another side. Through the black hole where the glass had been, Ethan saw a distorted version of the hotel lobby. But everything there was wrong. The floor was rotten wood, creaking like old bones. The walls were blackened as if scorched by an ancient fire. And in the center of this dead world, he was there, the clown, but now he wasn't just standing still. He moved, and he moved in a way that was all wrong. His limbs seemed to dislocate within his skin, as if there were no bones supporting his body. Each step produced a dry crack, the smile. Now it was even wider, tearing the pale cheeks. And then he ran towards the gap. Ethan screamed and scrambled backward as the creature crossed the space between worlds, emerging from the hole like something that should never have existed. The hotel lights flickered frantically, casting shadows that seemed to stretch towards him. The clown's laughter reverberated inside his head. He ran, without thinking, without looking back. He dashed through the lobby and out the front door. But the town was wrong. The festival, once bright and full of life, was now a macabre spectacle. The lights flickered in sickly hues. The stalls were empty. The rusted rides spun on their own, as if moved by invisible hands. A stench of rotting flesh hung in the air. Ethan stopped in the middle of the street, trying to comprehend what was happening. This isn't real. This can't be real. But then the laughter came again. Behind him, he turned slowly. The clown was there, at the end of the street, standing under a flickering lamppost. But now there were others with him. Figures began to emerge from the shadows, one by one, people, or rather, what remained of them. Their bodies were deformed like broken dolls, their eyes empty, their skin pale and stretched, as if they had been drained of all humanity, and they all laughed. The clown's laughter, coming from many mouths. Ethan backed away, felt terror spread through his bones. His heart raced uncontrollably. He was trapped. There was nowhere to run. The clown tilted his head, as if studying his prey. Then he took a step forward, and another, and the others followed. They were coming, and this time, Ethan knew there was no escape, but he wasn't going to wait for death. Without thinking, he turned and ran. His feet pounded the cracked asphalt. The street seemed to stretch, distorting around him. The festival folded in on itself, like a maze with no exit. He turned down a narrow alley between two old buildings, the air slicing his skin like razors. The smell of rust and rotting flesh filled his nostrils, but he ignored it and kept running. Then the alley ended at a tall wooden fence. Ethan stopped abruptly. "No, no, no!" He spun around. They were there. The deformed figures approached slowly, their bodies twisted at impossible angles. In the center, the clown, his smile even wider. The only way out was up. He threw himself against the fence, digging his fingers into the old damp wood. His arms ached, his muscles burned, but he forced himself to climb. The laughter was now right behind him when he finally threw his leg over. Something grabbed his ankle. The hand was cold, sticky. Ethan screamed and kicked hard. He felt something break under his blow, and he fell to the other side, landing hard on the ground. Pain exploded in his leg, but he had no time to feel it. He got up and looked around. He was behind an abandoned barn. The doors were wide open, like a hungry mouth. There was no other choice. He ran inside. The interior was a nightmare of shadows and dust. Rusty tools hung from the walls, some covered in something dark and dry. The smell of decay was unbearable. Ethan stumbled over something, a pile of rags on the floor. But when he tried to move away, he realized they weren't rags. It was a body, or what was left of one. The skin, gray, the eyes, empty, the mouth, frozen in a silent scream. And then he saw it. In the skeletal hand of the corpse, there was a coin, just like his. His stomach churned, and then he heard it. Footsteps, slow, dragging. He entered the barn, Ethan's breath caught in his throat. The silhouette blocked the entrance, head tilted, black eyes, and then the lights went out. Absolute darkness enveloped him like a tomb. The laughter started again. 2 days later, the police found Ethan Grayson in the town square of Harvest Creek, lying on the dirt ground, his eyes staring at the sky. He was alive, but he didn't speak, didn't move. He just held something in his hand, an old coin, engraved with a phrase. Now, it's your turn. Now tell me, would you have the courage to visit the Harvest Creek Festival after this? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you like psychological horror stories like this one, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and turn on notifications, because there are many more nightmares waiting for you. See you at the next horror.